Here we are, the point of no return. I'm Ed Piskor.
Jim Rugg.
I'm Tom Scioli.
Dark Knight Chapter 3.
Hunt the Dark Knight.
It starts off with a bang. When in any Kurt Swan Superman comic did you get to see the first person view, like through the clouds, like coming down at the city?
View, yeah.
Amazing. And then that iconic crusty old fat lady drunk Miller and Moore and Gaiman, like they all have this character. It's like mad heady kind of character that kind of like shows up.
I was wondering if this because Paul Verhoeven stole so much of this for RoboCop. I wonder if he stole when Arnold Schwarzenegger shows up in the airport dressed as an old fat lady, and then he takes the head off. But I wonder if he grabbed that from this.
This is such a bizarre opening too.
Yes,
it's
very
like is Bruce Wayne undercover here, waiting for this liquor store to be knocked off or whatever?
And he's not only is he a superhero, not only is he a billionaire playboy, but now he's an amazing impressionist,
master of disguise, which I think is that was in the Neil Adams thing. He would play Matches Malone, so he would take on other alter ego personas, to go undercover in these sting operations.
It's come out fairly recently on McFarlane's blog that he helped ink some backgrounds and stuff on Dark Knight Returns, man, and he cited the pages that he worked on. Right, he said, the sequence with the fat drunk lady, I got to draw a bunch of explosion lines and bricks coming out of the wall and stuff like that, because he was friends with Klaus Janson's inking assistant. And we live in an amazing era. The artist edition is out. It's before us on the table. And it's one of the sequences very early on where we see the blue blur of Superman, and the wall kind of explodes. When you take a look at the original art, all of those explosion lines are whited out.
That story, it's almost too good to be true, because the subject matter of these first couple pages is so McFarlane. You could always if you're making McFarlane's life story, you could always be okay, there's a homeless woman. Okay, I'm gonna put her. I'm gonna people with swastikas on. It's just so on brand for McFarlane.
Frank Miller and these swastikas, in all of his comics, it shows up. There's swastikas in Ronin. Little Miho has a swastika fucking ninja star.
And talking about Todd McFarlane, Miller's quote was, he said, Todd McFarlane owns the mind of the reader, or the mind that would carve a swastika into their school desk. That's a Miller quote.
Do you know what it's from?
I think it might be from that book that Fantagraphics put out of the Miller interviews. They made a collection of all their interviews. I think it's in there. But he's McFarlane, and I'm thinking is Frank talking about himself and putting it on Todd?
A little projection. Great Varley color. I feel her color game steps up in these last couple issues. And once again, with the artist edition, we can see a lot of Frank Miller redrawings in these last two issues. So we were having conversation before about what is that, and Klaus's kind of the back and forth between he and Miller. My projection, my thoughts are that they're seeing the results of the color finally in the first two issues. Not necessarily just the boards with the acetate overlay, but I'm saying they're seeing the actual printed comics, right? So a lot of the redrawn panels that you see in issue 3 and 4, it's really a lot of simplifying Klaus's light sources and stuff. There'll be little wolves, and he's delineating where the light source is, and Miller is simplifying all of that, leaving it all open. Once again, that Todd McFarlane panel with the wall exploding, just leave that out. Let Lynn take care of the special effects.
And where Miller does the most inking is in that fight with the Joker. And a big thing he is take away some of the shadow on Joker, take out some of the thicker lines, because the Joker is just pure whiteness.
Yeah.
So you want as little line, almost like a glare off of him. talking about how Ronin precedes this. Ronin was a flop. I'll bet if Ronin wasn't a flop, Miller would be inking this too. But I'll bet he had like a little bit of fear, and it's like, let me go back to the original Coca-Cola formula.
Yeah.
Let me get the hit. The hit is Miller Janson. Let me bring back Janson. And now he's starting to feel his. He's getting a little more confident, and it's like, okay, I'm. And then after that, he does ink more of his stuff. After this work.
One of the things once digital coloring shows up is the role of the inker changes. Up to I don't know, late 90s, early 2000s, the inker was tasked with things like weight, volume, atmosphere, texture, all of these things. All of those tasks have been replaced for the most part by the colorist. This is the very first.
Yeah,
this is the early, start
before
of that
computer,
movement.
but yeah.
And some of those battles between Miller and Klaus Janson and the inking probably stems from that.
Mm-hmm.
It's taking some of the stuff that traditionally the inker, Janson, the finisher would handle, and being like, no, Lynn's going to do all of that. Mm-hmm. So I think that part's kind of neat in that it is ahead of its time, just from that standpoint of like all those responsibilities now we just take for granted. The colorist handles all of that. It's a lot of decision making that this is the first time we're really seeing the colorist take over those responsibilities.
Sticking with the first couple of pages still, we're seeing more of the splinter cells, man. So it's like we have this Nazi wing, and then later on in the issue there will be the Nixons, and then there will be like the Neo mutants. Mm-hmm. So the gangs are just
and
carving territory.
This is the influence of the Warriors.
Yeah,
where
totally.
It's like every gang has its own theme, and he's just trying to think of as many like crazy themes that you could give a gang.
Yeah, and dealing with all this stuff, all the Batman, all the gang warfare and stuff. There's a great page where there's this like buck passing situation that begins with President Reagan, who hands it down to the governor of the state that they never name, who hands it down to the mayor. And it goes all the way down to Commissioner Yindel. It's a good little sequence.
Yeah, I like pull that trigger and I'll be back for you. He's got everybody on notice.
It's like Judge Dredd or something like that.
Yeah, a lot of great Judge Dredd type one-liners. When Batman first shows up in like issue 1, it's kind of like a horror movie. It's kind of like Rambo, like the book Rambo or whatever, where you're not seeing him. You're seeing the effect of him. Yeah. So he is kind of like Jason or Freddy Krueger. Like you're seeing like somebody get sucked into a doorway. And then it's not until like page 26 that you actually see Batman. So it's like show the effect before you show the cause. And Superman in this is exactly that. We're seeing like he's doing that again with Superman. And it makes a lot of story sense because Superman has to be invisible because he technically doesn't exist. But you're seeing the effect of Superman. And it's so long before you see Superman. So that
a lot of good sequences too, man. This is where we get that yuppie guy, Brian Brass Balls, who we will see again later, who's like, oh yeah, like that this guy forced himself on me, and it really is like you go into the city and you see like the weekend warriors, man, who are like freaked out about like city life, like they don't know how to navigate those situations, man, and that's what that character is. And then of course when the homeless guy or whatever ends up on the train tracks, man, a couple handprints on a subway car and everybody's all good. All these little great like one-page sequences throughout this whole thing.
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways Miller probably did approach this like a newspaper comic or something, like page by page of like each page is like a fresh start, or maybe each 2 pages, but just taking it a page at a time. And
this is the Joker issue.
Yeah, the Joker. Yeah,
and there's some great kind of expressionistic stuff that Miller does with Joker, even early on, whenever he's kind of like, doing his Eddie Haskell routine with a psychiatrist guy, and when he's trying to act like feeble and vulnerable, like kind of victim, the way Miller draws him is like super wrinkly and emaciated, like real wrinkly around the eyes, like eyeballs like sucked in and gaunt. And then later on, like as soon as that guy's looking away, he's got the rictus smile, clear face.
Yeah, he's manipulative, narcissist, psychopath, whatever. Like he plays the victim.
Yeah. So it's a more drawing feeling than like trying to be naturalistic or realistic. You just don't see that in your average jobber comic.
When Gordon's having his like retirement party, there's like this one detail that like always jumped out to me just as like an artist or whatever, where he's like reading from his script and then he like looks up for a second and like his glasses go white catching the glare. Like I just think that's like such like a great little detail.
Yeah, we can make that happen here.
That's a Varley, right? That'd be a Varley.
Well, I don't know because Miller's drawing like Gordon's eye in all the other panels, and then he looks up, and then it's just
he's really
glasses.
good with glasses. You know, he was really good with Murdoch in glasses and Daredevil. I can remember seeing an original page at Billy Ireland of that. You know,
10,000 hours of drawing a guy in glasses. He's bringing to here.
Yes.
Another trope of the 80s, man, was that Dr. Ruth lady going
Mm-hmm.
everywhere telling you to have sex all day, and there were
Hey, fucking.
there were games, like I remember...
Yeah, the Dr. Ruth video game even.
I don't remember
there
that,
was a board game
but
and a
I
video
remember
game.
being at friends' houses, man, and like the adult games that are like above a thing, man. It was like the Dr. Ruth sex game, and I would just stare at it like, oh, I want to see what's in that thing, man. And then, of course, man, we have Dave Letterman. The Dave Letterman sequence. Yeah. I think that makes me notice that like Frank Miller doesn't like pronounces it endocrine Letterman. You see what I'm saying? But like the sequence, the panel where Joker steps out and it's kind of like half page splash and you see the crowd and it's just like these faces in perspective at kind of like a soft focus and then they kind of like go off into nothing. It looks drawn so fast. It looks so good, and I've been tasked with doing similar things where it's like I got to draw like a multitude of people and try to. That's not easy to do. I'm here to tell you that
crowds are hard.
Freaking really tough.
There's the cover of Superman versus Muhammad Ali, Neil Adams, and Neil Adams did his like quick sketch version to figure it out. And it's like that Miller one. It's beautiful. It's all these like just blobs and stuff, but it looks so amazing and so real. And then he did the finished version where it's like, here's Howard Cosell, here's this guy and that guy, and it doesn't work. It sucks.
You know what? I think you really hit on something here, man. And I don't think I was able to put my finger on it until you just mentioned that. But I think that's what Miller and Janson are able to catch with some of this art. They're able to catch some of that rawness from like a set of roughs, and you do not see that in comics almost ever, where they're able to like retain that energy that's as effervescent as like the
thumbs. Where you would see it is older cartoonists. Yeah. Older cartoonists would be much more gestural, and I don't know if they worked. You know, maybe working two up meant that it was more forgiving, and so you know it was almost generational that everything was done quickly, loosely. And I mean, even drawing, you know, we've gone from sort of drawing and moving your arm, you know, and move your shoulder to like the pen nib inking of the 90s, you know, where it's like meticulously getting in and doing this very controlled stuff. So,
what would you say this paper? It's not quite 2 up.
No, it's not. It's slightly bigger than the average like 11 by 17 paper. I think it's about 12 by 18, 12 by 19. Kind of odd that it's just a little bit bigger, and it's DC paper, so even stranger that it's, you know, a little bit bigger, but. Yeah, I don't know. I thought that whenever I was looking at the artist edition, enough that I measured it because it did feel bigger.
It's pretty big, yeah.
Yeah.
That moment where the Joker steps out, it is again that like staging where it's like very minimal. It's like you have a curtain, and it's shot from below, so you don't have to draw the floor, you know. And it's a perfect moment for this character because the Joker is theatrical. You know, he's a clown. He's and you know, narcissist. Like this is where he shot. This is he's in his element now. He's on the stage. All eyes are on him, and you know he's about to do his thing.
Miller is so good at that, by the way, of just like figuring out the smart way to just communicate things like with simple lines. So like his Batcave, you can't get more simple than his Batcave. It really is just like spiky blobs, and it actually made me think about there was that great annual that he did that Denny O'Neil wrote of like it was a Spider-Man thing, and what has to end up happening is, you know, the newspaper press factors in, and what has to end up happening is Dr. Octopus has to get sucked through the offset print machine. So you imagine the complexity of that, the way Miller handles that, amazing. I digress. Let's talk about these bomb kids, because that's the weirdest thing that like I can't put my finger on. I have a million questions about.
This is the Joker issue, like you said. This is the Joker issue. So we're still in Batman's world, but it's Joker's reality bleeds in. So you're getting, you know, crazy stuff. You're getting like you're getting cotton candy and carnivals and evil talking dolls and stuff. We're in his world. the poison lips, mind control lipstick. It's actually because of the Joker's influence in the reality, it's starting to get a little closer to the Batman TV show of the 60s. It is a little more like fun, go. Like a very dark, nightmarish version of that. But still, yeah, and so they're like, I guess this guy makes robots, and these robots can fly and levitate and explode and stuff, and they're children for whatever he makes them into children's dolls. I mean, I think Miller is just kind of looking around at the world, and he's reacting to Cabbage Patch Kid, and the same way he's reacting to everything, he's reacting to Cabbage Patch Kid.
He has a character like the I think his name was Gladiator in the Daredevil comics, is like a version of that character where it's just like the builder, the guy like the Deus Ex Machina like builder character that could just make whatever you need for whatever purposes, and Joker's purposes are nefarious to say the least.
Maybe this is a digression, but Matt Murdock shows up in the previous issue, and he says something along the lines of like, maybe these people could be rehabilitated and helped, and I think that is like where we're seeing Miller approaching this as what this is, as a like not his personal worldview, but because when he was doing Matt Murdock would defeat a guy like the Gladiator, and then in the next issue defend him. Matt Murdock was a whatever you want, like a liberal or like an 80, like Matt Murdock was a yuppie, and so that world, it was a more tolerant worldview in that. And Batman's a different character. Batman doesn't go show up in court the next day to like defend the Joker, or so it is like the difference between the works and not necessarily personal worldviews. But I digress.
Are we at the carnival now?
One pit stop before they get to the fair is with Selina.
Yeah.
And this is where we see the mind control lipstick is introduced there. Fights with the cops happen there. There's
another Master of Disguise gimmick
situation.
Right?
Yeah, where he plays the cop who shows up.
The inspector or whatever.
Whenever he finds Selina, she's wrapped in the Wonder Woman costume.
Yeah, and as a kid, I didn't know what to make of that, and I was like, "Is this Wonder Woman?" I didn't know the lore as much, and it's like, to me, it's just like it's a flirt. Like he throws in Easter eggs. It's an Easter egg, and it's also like a kink. It's like you dress up as Wonder Woman, please.
Yeah. So at that point, Yindel and her men show up. Batman punches out the window. He and Robin jump out onto the Batwing to escape. They shoot at him a little bit. Add child endangerment to the list of crimes. And at this point, there's a 6-panel grid within the 16-panel grid structure. There are panels across the bottom, but it's essentially those top 3 tiers. And it's really great of the harness breaking and Robin starting to fall and Batman grabbing her. I think there's reference again at this point to Jason Todd. And you wonder, again, Jason Todd died in Batman's Holy War here at some point. It's a great 6-panel grid reference, and it reminds me of traditional superheroes.
But then with the Frank Miller twist, she hugs him for dear life, and he pets her.
Well, and earlier on, she's looking at Robin's, basically his corpse, his costume hanging up, and then he's like, he was a good soldier, and then he's holding her, and he's like, good soldier. So it's that sinister aspect of that, It's like her fate going to be the same as Jason, another casualty in Batman's obsessive,
And they make the link of the cotton candy, at this point that they're going.
Yeah.
There's one more tip that he gives Yindel to save the governor.
Governor.
So an example of him sort of building a bridge to this new police commissioner. It's not enough to get her on his side yet, but it is one more piece. He can't get there in time to save the governor, but she could. Her men could. So that's kind of a neat moment. Again, interchanging Gordon for Yindel. It's a pawn in Batman's war.
The cycle's beginning
He
again.
can use the police to help, affect what he wants. And they realize that the cotton candy is the thing that Joker's doing, the county fair, and this is where we see Carrie Kelly sort of speak up, those are my friends there. It's kind of a great moment. It has a lot more weight than, the buildings blowing up and we hear that 12 people died, or the Letterman set, and the crowd dies or whatever. That's kind of meaningless, but seeing one of these characters actually respond, I think is a good moment.
Really
Carrie Kelly is
she's great. Yeah.
This is not a very good story without her.
Yeah, and that at this time there was an argument that is Batman better off without Robin? Is Robin a relic of the past and shiny and kid stuff? And now that because Batman was getting serious even before this, do we just get rid of Robin? And I think Miller's response is, without Robin, you don't have a Batman. Like Robin is so much a part of Batman's story that it's just not the same. It can't work. And for years after this, they did take Robin out of the after Robin died, they took Robin out of the equation for a while, and it the balance is off. You need that balance.
So Frank Miller's Batman, he is making sure that that he molds this girl into his image, man. And he's a little tone deaf. So he's bringing his Robin to the amusement park after the boys all got their cotton candy
and are scattered around dead.
And I quote, "A girl of 13 breathes in sharply. Suddenly her innocence is lost. It ends tonight." And it's like, you brought her there. So it's like, here, look at this, like holding her head. Here, look at your friends.
Well, and Miller doubles down on this in later Batman work. Like when he's revisited Batman a number of times in the decades since then, he doubles down on where Batman is clearly a child abuse, you know?
This is a rough book for Robin. This sequence. You know, she gets involved with that bomber. It's a pretty disgusting reaction that she has to him. You know, implications of the grossness of this character that's all over her, and she's fighting for her life.
And he's a big man child.
Yeah, it's
yeah, and he's like Geppetto or something. Like he could create anything, but he creates these little children, automatons.
This is the dark book in this series. You know, this is
we're in the Joker's
You talk
world.
about reading the first 2 volumes, Ed.
Yeah.
You know, a lot more than these, and looking at even my notes are different for this book. You know, it's just such a different feeling. The whole tone, the pace of this whole book is different than the first 2 or the 4th one.
Because Batman's part of a pantheon, Superman's part of a pantheon. Like I'm looking at Batman's Pluto. You know, he's Lord of the Underworld, and then Superman's Apollo. He's like the god of the sun. But then it's like they're like the Joker. The closest thing in the Greek pantheon is Hermes, and Joker doesn't quite. Joker's got he's got some Hermes in him, but Joker is like almost from a different pantheon. Joker is like a Satan figure or something. Like he's not from that. So it does feel very alien because you're colliding these like 2 pantheons.
This is Batman's like dark secret. It's his unresolved past. There's a sequence early on that flashes back to his dad dying, and I made a note about why is this here? It doesn't make sense. You know, it's like 2 panels. And there's a couple of these that intersperse throughout. And I think it's reference to this idea of, like, by letting Joker live all this time, it just keeps killing people. Like, this is Batman's responsibility. He's never been able to take care of it. And finally, we're going to see him take care of it, presumably. It's a dark. This is the dark. This is the
descent into darkness, and where does this story lead? But into like through the river Styx into the underworld.
Almost literally, yeah. It's really great. And same with the mirror, the Hall of Mirrors that they all go through, and they become interchangeable. You know, it's I don't know when Killing Joke came out, but in a weird way, like this is the same relationship between Batman and Joker that's in Killing Joke and celebrated. It's here.
They drive it home through the lettering and the coloring too, because there will be captions for Batman's inner monologue that are the same shape as the dialogue balloons for Joker, and they're also both colored the exact same. So they drive it like straight home.
That's what I thought of. Book 1, you mentioned there are sequences where it's not clear what's happening, the visuals. And to me, this is another example of that, where that effect is used, but through word balloons, lettering, coloring of those word balloons shape.
I think, like, we come into this story with the question, is the Joker my mirror? Is he me? Are we the same? And then we get our answer by the end of this, like whether he is or not.
Yeah, it's the meditation of even more than a mirror, but another element of his personality. Like, we're the same person.
Yeah.
This is the destructive part of me or whatever. And as long as I'm me, this exists. You know, it triggers Joker, right? Joker comes out of hibernation or sleep or whatever at the same time Batman comes out. You know, it's like they're the same character.
Do you want to talk about some of the stuff that's being intercut? Because like we're on this like Joker versus Batman track, but we're intercutting stuff. We're seeing Superman as a weapon of war, and Superman is kind of like I don't know if Superman comics were ever like this even during World War II, but it is kind of like, you know, Submariner or where it's World War II and he's like a warrior and he's destroying jet planes. He's with that great, like, where it's just like all black Superman and these red eyes, like Darkseid or something, and you don't see the rays coming out of his eyes. You just see the glow and the effect. And then
Mark Miller was taking notes.
Yeah, right. Sinking. I was taking notes too. Sinking battleships and stuff, aircraft, like very like it does make me think of 1940s, and maybe that happened within the body, like it definitely happened on the cover for some, there'd be some Superman imagery of him and there was the like Superman versus Hitler story and stuff, but.
Can we talk a drawing thing about this issue, because it is in that amusement park, and we do see this roller coaster throughout, and Miller has drawn real roller coasters. Like there's an old issue of Daredevil, man. Roger McKenzie written issue, man, where it's like Bullseye and they're fighting on
great roller coaster, great sequence.
Yeah, in perspective.
Can't be fun to draw a roller coaster.
That's what I'm saying.
Lots
and lots of wooden boards, man, and this roller coaster, it's just like this track going all over the place.
Attached to nothing.
Attached to nothing, and it looks great.
Yeah.
And you never question the physics of it. You never question the structural integrity. It is like, Cabinet of Dr. Caligari type imagery where it's like, you just need to communicate the idea and let the damn story run its course.
Yeah, and it's cartooning. He plays off of it it moves through, like they move through that thing, and it pays off and plays off. And again, we're in the Joker's world. This is the Joker's version of a roller coaster. It's this insane, irrational thing that just can't exist in reality.
This is the ugliest of the drawings. From a
so far
thinking of a polish kind of approach. This is where Miller really asserts himself as an inker.
Right.
And I think perfectly apt. The Joker story, the dark story, the ugliest moments of this story, it's clearly reflected in the art. And I had talked before about kind of that contemporary look and almost trying to remove this comic from what we think of as superhero comics and the way those look. Like Ralph Steadman comes to mind. It's very scratchy lines.
Yeah.
It's ugly, it's grotesque, and it's, I think, some of his most effective drawing in terms of capturing what is happening with the characters. It's being reflected in the drawing, in the mark making. It's strange almost, these drawings.
I think
very disturbing when I read them originally.
Once again, man, like we need Lynn Varley to hold the whole effort together. She is the load-bearing wall that can make this thing work, because it can become very convoluted otherwise.
For all of the reference to, say, Sienkiewicz and Mazzucchelli's use of line and trying to use line in different ways, this pushes it further than either of those guys ever do. Like, this goes into definitely ugly territory. I think anybody would look at some of these drawings, especially you get to the very last page, and it's almost disgusting. It's almost like he goes too far with it, and he pulls back. He does not continue to work to that degree. It reaches its peak at the biggest moment of this particular volume.
I think it's what that moment demanded, what that moment needed, and I think that might have been where Miller and Janson's wires got crossed a little, because from Janson's point of view, it's like, hey, I'm a professional. I'll do whatever you want, and I'll make this job sing for you. And from Miller's point of view, it's like, I have this very specific idea of how this thing has to be, and there's only one person on Earth who can deliver it, and it's me. And that's the area of this book where you do see like all those like Miller inkings.
It's one of those things it's impossible to have a guy of Janson's level and be like, listen, make it uglier, draw it worse, throw away your pen. Like it's all these things that like you just can't do that as a professional.
And it's like nothing personal. Your inking is great, it's fabulous, but for this particular part, I need to do
Yeah, you
as guys who do all this stuff ourselves, like we can relate,
Right, but you'd be hard pressed to have somebody whose livelihood is, counted on of turning in a page that looks a certain caliber of polish and finish. It is basically breaking all of those
slap
rules.
in the face or whatever. It's just cross wires.
I have a confession to make, man. Again, that 2-page sequence at the end with Joker's demise. It was as confusing to me as page 1. I have to go back.
Well, that's
what I said.
I
have to go back to what I said.
Yeah, legibility.
Maybe the first 10. I think maybe somebody told me what the heck I was reading, because the first
it took me years.
Yeah, me too. It took me multiple readings, and he is trying.
I appreciate your honesty, fellas, man, because there's a lot of liars out there who pretend like they got everything.
I don't think it's accidental that it's built that way either. A lot is happening. As I said, I feel like these are the same characters. It's almost a person at war with themselves. So we see the all the dialogue becomes impossible to know who's saying what, who's thinking what, is this a conversation or is this a thought bubble? Like, it's really hard to tell what's going on there. He's being stabbed.
He's communicating
Batman's
some
almost
very
being killed.
complicated. He's trying to communicate some very subtle, complicated things. The difference between, like, how do you communicate there's somebody strangling somebody and then the other person finishes the job? That's an insane thing to like. How do you without doing a super cheesy thing of like a streak coming around, like there goes my neck, like
Yeah, and then give that to me as a 12-year-old kid with like, I'm used to Jim Aparo, and like my vocabulary as a reader is extremely limited. I've never seen a character break their own neck.
I mean, for many of my readings of this, I assumed Batman killed the Joker. It wasn't until many readings that it's like, oh, Batman, and he's like, you couldn't even do it this time. Like, you have every reason in the world to kill me, and you still can't do it. Fuck you, and then I'm going to kill myself. Like,
this is Batman.
Batman never killed anybody.
Impotent, right? This
is a sex scene, and Batman, and it's like, man, come on, Batman got a limp dick, and
Boy, the sex scene part is really a strange way to think of this, considering his relationship with Robin throughout all of Batman history, and this book in particular. That's something I'm now processing like live in the moment.
Now we got to read that all over again.
Yeah, we need to come back in 20 minutes.
But yeah.
But I read it as like it's a statement about superhero comics. There are no like this is fantasy. This is a joke. Like, don't take it too seriously. There's no answer here. You're not going to solve any of these problems through these techniques. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, Batman's completely ineffective at this, and that was my takeaway. Like, this is the big Batman moment, and he's nothing. He can't do it.
The Joker is Batman's like view of sexuality and all of Batman's fears of sexuality, and the Joker is very sexual. He's pansexual, and this terrifies Batman. Batman wants so bad to fuck the Joker, but the very idea horrifies him to the core, and so all he can do is punch him and kick him and bite him and throw things at him, and it's like, now's the time for you to really fuck me, and you're limp dick, like this, like, and all through this text we're being told by multiple characters that Batman's problems are sexual, and Wortham got Batman, killed Batman by saying that Batman is a sexual character, that he's, repressed sexuality and pedophilia and all these things. Like, so it's just this is like a natural progression of these themes that Miller's doing as he explores. And the things you say about like the superhero, a critique of the superhero, but a critique of the superhero is not as big it's not as like visceral a thing as sort of like sexual terror that it would create such like that cultural critique that you're talking about, or that literary critique that you're talking about is not as powerful as the character's sexual terror, or possibly the author's sexual terror, or the industry's sexual terror, or the All
right, let's look at it from a non-sexual point of view.
Okay.
I don't know that we've said it on any of these recordings yet, but this is Batman is totally a fascist, the way this work is set up within Dark Knight Returns. So in a way, we could look at this through the idea of like, how does fascism work with somebody like Joker, that's chaos, possibly freedom, defiance, all of these things that the Joker represents compared to a fascist Batman being the fascist. And ultimately the fascism can't defeat the Joker. It can't stop the Joker. Like, Joker stops himself whenever the fascist falls short of being able to put an end to this, to silence him. He's mocking Batman the whole time, and Batman can't stop that.
I don't see that. I don't see it as because Batman could do all these things. It's Batman's like it's actually it's one of the few good things that you can say about Batman in this story. For all of his faults, he refuses to murder because it's so intrinsic to his origin story. But I don't see it as like, the limits of an ideology or a worldview. I do see it as like this is a moment where Miller's giving you a reason to like Batman. Because up until this point, there's a lot of reasons to be like, fuck Batman. This is the last Batman comic I'm ever going to read, and I'm going to throw out my whole collection. This is,
Can I close on saying that I absolutely love the way Ben Varley painted the blood on Joker's hand on that last page?
That's a great close, Ed.
And we can talk more about the sexuality of this scene because this is a two-parter. This is the first one that's not really, and so the scene continues, and the sort of like Freudian sexual overtones carry over into the next one.
I can't wait to see where you're going with this one. Any more? We're going to close this one out?
No, it's noteworthy that structurally this is different than the first two. The first two really stand on their own, and this is a part one of two.
And this is like Comics 101. If you're doing a comic series, start off with a bunch of one-parters, and then get a little comfortable, get your audience comfortable. Then you do the two-parter. You know, not really a rule followed anymore, but that is Comics 101.
That's going to wrap up this chapter of Dark Knight Returns. A couple of days, we'll be posting the finale to Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns. So stick around, same bat time, same bat channel. The way that you can be appraised of when the video gets posted online is to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon associated with that so that you can be notified whenever we post new videos. We usually post 1 or 2 things a week.
You can support the show and pick up Cartoonist Kayfabe merch at our spread shop. There is a link below this video where you can find all of that.
So we're going to prepare for a grand finale, but you guys know what your marching orders are.
Read more comics.
I gotta use the bathroom.